Welcome to another session solving tactics on chesstempo.com with the Advocate. This time you'll notice a little something different. If you're following the series, I've moved up to 1600 to 1700 problems. We're going to keep rolling with 1600 to 1700. I'll do 10 more videos like this, then move up to 1700, 1800, and then finally finish around 2000 before I repeat the series. If this is not your target level, please don't waste your time watching something that's too easy for you. Don't waste your time watching something that you perhaps won't understand. Just go for your target level and try to train those tactics. I'm not saying at all that watching this video would be a waste of time. No time that you spend in your chess education is ever going to be a waste, but there are possibly some videos that could benefit you more. So try to find the maximum benefit for your time. Try to find the video that works best for you. Wow. Wow. Okay, so things that I notice about this position. A, we are down a lot of material, but B, the king is slightly exposed and there's a passed A pawn. And I'm just wondering, this queen can't get to the A pawn really. So if I play rook b1 check, king h2, a3, knight b4, rook takes b4, pawn takes b4, a2, the pawn can't be stopped. And this knight can't do anything threatening really. The knight can't get around to f8, he can't get to f7. Let me just check that actually. The knight can't get to f7. No, the knight can't get to f7. He would need to get to d8. And that takes way too much time. So despite being down so much material, I think black does win here via promotion. So again, the line goes rook b1 check. I can't allow him to take, because if a3, knight takes, a2, knight d7, a1 promotes. But there must be some way to stop the pawn at that point. For example, knight takes a3, a2. Maybe not. Maybe I don't have to give rook b1 check. a3. Well, if a3... the problem with a3 is a3, the knight doesn't take on b8. The knight goes back to b4. And after rook takes b4, pawn takes b4, a2. The pawn's still unstoppable. So which one is better? I think it's better to play rook b1 check, because after knight b8, white doesn't pursue the queen. It'll be equality. And then he will pursue the f8 bishop. So for example, knight takes, if a3, knight takes a2, knight d7, a1 promotes, king h2, and then queen d8 is going to come. Whereas if I play rook b1 check, king h2, and then sacrifice for the knight, then I'll be a queen and a bishop against a lone queen. So rook b1 check, king h2, a3. The queen has nowhere to go to stop promotion, so knight b4 only move. Rook takes b4, pawn takes, and then a2. A1 queens. Mistakes made in this position, A3 immediately. I covered why that's not a good move. A3, and yes, if knight B4, you get the same line. But if knight takes B8, A2, knight D7, A1 promotes queen H2, and now you need to play queen A8. Knight takes... How to finish that? What I'd like to do is I'd like to try and win the D pawn to promote the C pawn. That feels like the way to go. Or maybe instead of, so if A3, knight takes A2, A1, king here, and now my threat is knight D8. Alright, so next problem. That's by far the most common mistake, but it just doesn't work really. You have equality at best. Next problem. Queen takes check. And I'll be a bishop up, but then after rook takes bishop, I'll have rook d8. So, what? Whoa. Oh, because he can save with rook d7. Okay. That was very stupid of me. Yeah, that was very stupid. Alright, so surely there is a checkmate here. Queen g6 check. King h1. Or king h2. Rook takes and I would lose my queen. So queen g6 check is really the only move that I consider in this position. Queen g6 check, the king would be forced to h2 or h1. If king h1, there's rook f1 check, king h2, queen g2 check. King h3. In that position, I can play rook f3 check. King takes h, rook check. If king back to h3, I'll have check and then mate to follow on the back rank. I'll walk him to the back rank and then checkmate. But the queen does cover the g4 square, so queen g6 check, king h1, rook f1 check, king h2. There's also bishop check, but then king g2 I don't like. After king g2, bishop takes f3, king takes, there's queen check. If king f1, there will be king f2 check, king e1, queen check, king. And there's no check, checkmate there. So queen g6 check, king h1, rook f2 check, king h1. I don't think the answer is going to be... Ooh, excuse me. I don't think the answer is going to be bishop g3 check. However, I could repeat with rook f2 check, and if king back to h1, if king back to h1, there's queen h2 mate, queen g2 mates. So the king would be forced to g3. Then I have queen g2 check, king takes h4, rook takes f4 check, king goes to g5, and then queen g6 checkmate. The rook is here, the queen is here, delivering mate to the king on h5. And if king h2, that's just a transposition. So now check. Oh wait, no, I forgot to throw in rook f2, yeah. Check, takes, and then queen g6 mate. Mistakes made in this position, I bet rook takes. Rook takes f4, not a common move actually. So people are seeing that they lose the queen. But bishop f2 check is the most common mistake. Bishop f2 check. I didn't consider bishop f2 check. Black to move. 4 minors, 3 minors, down a piece. I can play knight check and then win 2 rooks, but that's not enough. Is there some way to distract the queen here? So let's say bishop takes, queen takes. I also have bishop b5 there. But then he would have knight c5, knight c4 hitting the queen. Um, First, I just need to figure out how to recuperate a bit, like the piece in general. I don't even see a way to recuperate the piece at the moment. Knight takes, check, queen takes here. Maybe f5 or d5. But that doesn't seem like it's enough. There's knight check, queen here, and then queen d4. Attacking the pinned knight. As well as... But the knight is protected by the queen and the bishop. And this knight can just run away. But maybe there is something to giving a check here somehow. Huh. This is a difficult problem. So knight takes, queen takes, and then bishop here. And rook b1 is not an issue. I can take on e2, he takes here. I can take on e1, he takes here. And then I can take on f1. Or I can take on b2. So take here, bishop b5, knight c5, queen check, bishop back and queen takes here. That would recuperate the piece. It doesn't feel like enough, to be honest. It feels like I should be going for more. And I know that usually in tactics problems, you're not trying to find equality. But, well, after knight c5, bishop here, I am still threatening, I'm threatening to pick up the piece and also still threatening to win material with the skewer. And it comes with check. So maybe I still get the skewer in. Knight takes here. Queen takes. Bishop c, but if the queen just goes away, like doesn't even play knight c4, if the queen just goes away and I play bishop. But if I play bishop takes f1, queen takes f1, then I win the exchange at the end of it. Queen takes a1, queen takes f1, bishop takes a1. Okay. So when I play bishop c5, I'm threatening to win the exchange here, and I'm threatening to win the exchange here. Very deep. So knight takes e2 check, queen takes e2, bishop b5. Have I been saying bishop c5 this whole time? I think I have. So bishop b5, and if knight c4, queen check, bishop d3, I can play queen takes c5, queen takes c5, and bishop takes c4. This is the c4 square. And then my bishop is assaulting the rook on f1, and this bishop is hitting this rook on a1. And I'll win the exchange. So that's the knight c4 line. If knight takes check, queen takes bishop b5, and the queen moves away, I can take on f1, and then queen takes f1 or king takes f1, and then I can take on b1. And if rook b1 in that position, let's say bishop f1, rook b1, I can take on a2. And I'm fine. No. Whoops. Whoopsies. Okay, that was not even something that I considered. Not in the slightest. Distract the queen. I did consider trying to find a way to distract the queen, but this wasn't one of them. So at the end it's 2 rooks and 2 pieces against a rook and 3 pieces. So you're up the exchange. The line that I saw was this. Knight takes check, queen takes, bishop b5, and after queen f2, oh, this is, okay, yeah. Oh, and then rook takes f1. Queen f2, so that way the rook can take on f1. Uh-huh. Okay. Okay, fair enough. Yep, knight takes e2 check, most common mistake. That's too bad. Problem number 157787. Okay, double check. If king f8, rook g8 is checkmate. If king h7, I suppose I could promote to knight. Check. King would have to go to h8. Then I could play here check and pick up the rook on e7. Am I still mating there? So pawn check. King f7, rook g8 mate. h8, rook f8 check. Wait. Pawn check. If king f7, rook checkmates. If king h8, promotes king here, queen g8 is checkmate. And if king h7, pawn check, king h7, promotes to knight, knight check, king h8 would be forced. Then I would have knight check, king h7, knight check with a perpetual. I could also just promote, but then rook takes, pawn takes, and that's equality. But I am threatening mate. I'd like to try and find a checkmate in that position. Pawn check, king h7. Could I sack the rook? Pawn check, king h7, rook g7 check, king takes g7, queen f8 queen, king back to h7, queen takes e7 check, king h8, rook f8 mate. So again, that line goes pawn check, king h7, rook check, rook g7 check. King takes g7 is forced if king h8, f8 promotes checkmate. So king takes g7 forced, then f8 promotes check. King h7 is forced, queen takes e7 check, and then king g8 or king h8, there's rook f8 mate. That's good. That's a good problem. I like that one. Mistakes made in this position. Mistakes made in this position. Rook takes d2. Equality. Maybe not even. These two pawns are very dangerous. And this king is close enough to hold these pawns. So the thing that's dangerous about this endgame is not that black is a pawn up. It's that this king will be able to come over and hold the d pawn, while this rook will hold the d pawn and escort the g and h pawns. That's what makes this a difficult endgame. So rook d2 is not a good move. Let's go over some of the lines that I was considering. I considered... Never for a second did I consider anything other than pawn takes f7 double check, rook check, and pawn check here. So the king is forced to move. If king f8, rook g8 is checkmate. And if h8, then f8 queens is going to checkmate. And I considered this for a while, but I wasn't certain what to do here. I suppose you could just take the rook and just be happy that you're a piece up, but I was trying to find some sort of fanciness, something like this. But then I realized that the king could just go back to h7 and I'm perpetualing. This is a perpetual. Oh, not really a perpetual, because after king h7 you would just take on d2 and be a piece up. But I didn't see the checkmate there, and I really thought that there was a mate. So really being convinced that there was a mate allowed me to find rook g7 check. Next problem. I guess he wants to double on the b file. Oh. So rook check, king must go up, rook d2 check, rook takes, pawn takes, and the d pawn is unstoppable, huh? So rook check, king g2 is forced. Rook check, rook takes d2 is forced. Ish. Pawn takes, and then the pawn can't be stopped. The rook can't come back to control the d1 square. So after rook takes check, rook check, king g2, rook check. Best defense, probably king f3 or king f1. And then I just take the rook on b2 for free. Mistakes made in this position, rook d2 immediately. Rook d2 immediately doesn't work because of rook c2, but also because of rook b7, which ensures the perpetual. So right now white is threatening checkmate. If you do anything, black will checkmate. So black goes to b7, threatening mate. You need to cover the checkmate, so the rook must go away. And now there's a perpetual. Rook check here, and there will always be checks. Perpetual. So how did I solve that problem? First I solved the threat of rook b7, and I knew that any move that I made had to answer the threat of rook b7. So I was able to dismiss moves like rook d2. I was able to work around that move simply because I knew that after the rook landed on b7, there was no way to win. There would be no way to win. This looks like g4 checkmate, right? Queen check. If king h5, then g4 is mate. But g4 check, bishop here, then queen check, then king g5, then g4 check, king g5, and then queen f4 checkmate. That's just a move order. Okay, let's end the session here. That was the first set of 1600 to 1700. Did I miss one problem? Did I miss two problems? I'm not really sure. First, let's go over wrong moves. Problem number 72, 53, 6. Queen takes e8 is a mistake made in this position. Queen takes e8. That's a queen and a knight and two pawns against a queen and a hell of a lot of pawns. So I could definitely see how someone might be convinced that this could win. Yeah. I still think it's winning for white, actually. It looks very good for white, but it's just not checkmate. How did I solve that problem? I knew that it was checkmate. I just knew it. I knew that this would be checkmate because I saw that after this, king g5 would be mate, or king g4. Or king, why am I saying king g4? G4. I knew that g4 would be checkmate. Did I say king g4 that whole time? Ugh. I don't know why I do that. I'm talking and the words come out. So I saw that g4 would be checkmate, and I just figured out the different ways to make it work. This is not actually a line that I calculated. The line that I calculated was this. But it's just a transposition. Alright, that'll be it for this session. Take care. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck with your chess journeys. Until next time.